as they matched up. So we'll have to see if those are kind of contested picks.
The thing about this game is going to be the 3.9 patch. Draven's passive is completely changed.
Yeah, that's true.
He lost a lot of early game bullying power. People definitely know that it's a nerf, but they're not quite sure if they still want to play with Draven because nobody has really had time to experiment with the new passive and see how the extra gold, you know, can come into a new item at a specific time, or how they can actually roll with the new kit. So I think they might shy away from this Draven until they've actually adjusted to the new passive.
We'll see what they do. Renekton's out. Week 1, TSM came into this matchup with a heyday team. They had Kha'Zix, Shen, Thresh, the Draven that they wanted, like you said, passive change. So taking out the Zed, that's at Reginald, Kha'Zix-ish. You don't want that single target assassin coming in too hard. But we'll have to see what they decide to ban out. Jace already off of there, obviously, coming into this matchup between these guys. I'm
really wondering why Reggie has not pulled out his Lissandra, because when Lissandra first came out, everyone was banning it against TSM. I feel like after a couple weeks of it continuously being banned against Reggie, Reggie also kind of forgot about Lissandra because he's like, oh, I'm not going to be able to play her. But now, teams are not banning it against them anymore, and it's open, but he's not actually picking up that champion even when it is available.
It is interesting to see that they don't use it, and it gets used a lot in Europe in the LCS and whatnot. So, you know, maybe these guys looking for the momentum before they tried to branch out, but maybe branching out is the answer in the first place.
It fits his playstyle so well, and he actually put in a lot of practice when it did first come out, and then stopped after it was getting banned so much. But we are going to see the go-to pick here for the TheOddOne. His favorite jungler at this moment is Elise. That's what he used to climb up into the Challenger, and she's just so strong right now because of the amount of damage she can put out without having to build any offensive items. Just because of her Qs, the percentage damages there combining to keep her relevant all game long.
And those first 3 picks are some of the ones I was just talking about that TSM had all of those first 3 picks on their team in Week 1 games. So already Coast trying to take away that Shen from Dyrus and not give him that global pressure or presence.
Dyrus now hovering over that Rumble. It looks like he wants to be the one in charge of the Euro today because he really got schooled yesterday by balls out in that bottom lane.
So what is the matchup now? Jarvan, obviously we know Nintendude likes to do the Doran start, and we've seen some other junglers doing it as well. How's that fare against the TheOddOne or against Elise when you're not going for potions?
So the normal Doran start that we've been seeing on the Uders and the Lee Sins are because either the Uder player is taking a 2% lifesteal quintessence, and they're using that plus level 2 turtle stance to lifesteal back up, so they don't have to have any potions, or the Lee Sin with the safeguard also has lifesteal doing the same thing. Now Nintendude's Doran start on his Jarvan, he didn't take any lifesteal. He just skipped the jungling altogether after getting both buffs. He takes both of his buffs and then immediately recalls and goes to their solo lane that's being 2 versus 1. So that depends a lot on how the actual lane matchups come out. Because if you make that start and TSM makes the switch to go 2 versus 2 in their lane and then have the solo laners go against each other, then we'll see Nintendude making the moves for the early ganks instead.
Let's see what they lock in for these last few ones. What will help those ganks assist in the lanes? It was a Graves and a Twitch for the last 2 matchups that DontMashMe brought to the table for TSM. We'll have to see what he decides to do some pew-pews with this game. He is up against that Vayne, a late game team comp coming in. It looks like he may be thinking about that Twitch once again.
Yeah, he's thinking about it, and he does lock it in. DontMashMe there, he really loves the crit Twitch style. He's gotten the Sword of the Divine a few times actually on the Twitch, going for the 3 guaranteed crits to get that burst damage down for a team fight. But with TSM already having Rumble, their sort of mid-game team fighting, you know, especially around the Dragon Pit, is going to be very scary.
Looks like TSM with their last pick here in our first game of the day. We'll be starting off against Coast, and like we said, these guys started off the summer split, so they're well aware of what they have for each other. Each game has been watched diligently day to day, and the homework has been done. We're gonna see. I like the Shiphtur on Ahri. Hasn't really been one of his top champions that he's brought out, but that champion pool is ever so big for him.
They definitely use him as a playmaker too, though. And Ahri, with her 3 dashes and the charm is a great one for setting up picks. She can catch a single target out of position, and that's what they want to do against this TSM team that's running this dual combo here of the Rise and Rumble that are looking for the AoE damage. They'd rather just snag somebody out of position, either use the Ahri or come in with a Shen, stand united to just turn the small skirmishes into their favor, whereas TSM is looking to just wipe out everyone at once.
See if this works. With their late game strategy lately, with WildTurtle just farming off on the side, the composition they have can hold the siege at turrets quite well, so they should be okay if they get to that mid game without losing lanes too bad.
And they do have Rumble, who's decent at wave clearing. We've heard Meteos talk about how he doesn't like Vayne mainly because she doesn't wave clear well until she gets something like a static Shiv or gets much later into the game. So that is one of the weaknesses of that WildTurtle split push. They just are trying to focus more of their farm on him, kind of like a double lift strategy there for CLG.
So in a strategy like this, you have a Jarvan and a Shen. So when you go to gank that lane, you have hellacious amounts of crowd control. Do you focus Dyrus down and make sure Rumble only has an equalizer to fight? Or do you just kind of feel it out? Because nobody really knows what TSM is going to do lately.
Well, you always have to be very careful when ganking a Rumble lane. Every time we see one, I restate this as a warning to all junglers. When you're going to gank a Rumble lane, you have to be very careful. Yes, because if he is in the danger zone, that 50% extra damage on his Flame Spitter is AoE, and it can bring both of you down, and it opens you up to being counter-ganked very successfully by the enemy team. And OddOne on Elise is definitely in the position to get there very quickly and rappel down in to turn the tides of that fight.
All right, getting on to the Rift. We'll see what these teams have to do. When Coast took on Curse yesterday, Coast I referenced what Curse was doing in the beginning of the spring split is they put up a human line of scrimmage with the least amount of wards possible, and then once they start to leave, they reward that spot because they were obviously a human ward for it. So we'll see if they continue with that. A lot of teams towards the end of each day, it seems like they invade a little bit less and a little bit less. It's odd.
It's interesting that TSM, they have 2 Explorer wards, too, speaking of how many wards they're grabbing. So those are short wards, you know. It's only going to last the 60 seconds. But because Rise goes full utility, they have the option of grabbing another one. He doesn't have to get that, by the way. There's plenty of really strong masteries in that utility tree that he could opt for. So having both of those makes me think that they will look for something early, and they are going to try and get an advantage in the jungle. Because not only do they have 2 Explorer wards, but they also have the possibility of grabbing someone with an early death sentence. And we've seen so many times how grabbing an early death sentence and first blood like that can just continually just snowball an entire game.
And how does a lane work like this for MashMe back in the other favor, right? Because if you hold the death sentence, it kind of acts as aggression as well, because then you always have the chance to use it. But there's sustain in that lane from Daydreamin. Are they going to match that up and want to go 2v2 since they know they're just going to be healed up?
The big story, if this happens to be a 2 versus 2 lane matchup and both of them do end up meeting each other, is going to be ward control of the side bushes. It's so important as a support when you're going up against Nami and Thresh specifically to get the vision inside one of those bushes, because if you can see a death sentence being started, it's so much easier to dodge. And the exact same thing with Nami Bubble. But if you're blind, the cast of a Nami Bubble landing is way too difficult to dodge if you don't see the cast coming out. So they definitely are going to have to use a lot of their wards for the side bush control just to be able to stay in that 2 versus 2 lane and fight competitively.
All right, looks like we're going to get this one restarted right quick. NintendudeX just loaded in with the incorrect runes. I think, obviously, he selected the right ones, but it just kind of blipped out on the way in. So we're going to get those fixed up. No reason to head around the jungle without any runes. Hotshot did it in the spring split, and he kind of saw that it was good. But he played Cho'Gath, and Cho'Gath becomes a giant beast. So there's kind of that factor in there.
We always bring up that point all the way back in the spring split when Hotshot went into the game with the no runes, and actually they won that game. They won that, so
yeah.
It's a viable strategy, I guess. Proven, 100% win rate.
If you don't say anything, nobody's the wiser. Nobody's going to click on you and be like, wait a minute. That's a complete empty page. We should just gank that lane over and over again. ZionSpartan on your screen as they get themselves back in. Picks and bans are going to be the same thing as they go down. And we're actually just going to get this locked in and not even have to worry about the bans.
Yeah, look at Nintendude over here. I'm happy that he didn't go back and use another one of those unorthodox jungles because he's had so much success on this Jarvan. He's actually, what is it, the last like 3 games or something before that Gragas, he's been using the Jarvan very effectively, and especially with that Doran start that you talked about where he doesn't waste any money on consumables. He gets an early power boost from Doran's blade stacking, and it really shows in his ganks.
A lot of what they do is, you know, calculated by them. They're not trying to be gimmicky. It's just very high risk, high reward. Because if that risk gets, you know, completely slaughtered in the beginning by the opposing team, that reward never really follows.
That's always something I'm looking to do. I'm a very stingy person too. I don't like to buy too many pots or too many wards for people. I definitely always looking to cut those down. So I kind of like that stingy Nintendude style.
And we got to remember, how far are we into the season now? We're talking about the spring split a little bit, but these guys are at 3rd time playing, which means they only play 1 more time.
Yeah.
Each team plays 4 times as you go through the spring split or summer split, and we're flying through this already. It's almost over. These teams are going to definitely have to start making these changes count if they've made them.
And Coast already talked about the fact that they have never beaten TSM in the regular season. So it is actually a mental blocker for them and does add a little bit of edge for TSM. So
it turns out Elise does find her way into the game, Coast versus TSM, for a 3rd time. This one back into the hands of TheOddOne. We'll have to see how they contribute with that in the jungle. Looks like TSM is actually going to be setting themselves up pretty wide across the map.
Reggie prefers to have the spiders on his side.
Yes.
He won't have to deal with them ganking him from behind. And Nintendude did start with the Doran's Blade once again. So we'll have to see if they make the lane swaps to go for that 2 versus 1 and just send him as backup to sit there in lane and help Zion look for some extra farm, or if they actually do. Oh man, this is going to be an interesting interaction here with Dyrus. He is at the far end of the tri-bush though. This is probably the safest spot you can be.
Nothing has been grabbed here for Shiphtur. He is waiting, so that charm could still be a possibility. We don't see anything as well onto Shen, so everybody's running in here with 0 abilities to level it up at that last second.
And this is pretty much the textbook reaction as soon as they see the invade. On their red side, TSM goes in to lay down the counter wards, and both teams are going to have vision on the opponent's red side jungle. This is pretty much how the normal LCS games are going nowadays. Everybody invading red sides over and over again.
So what does this ultimately provide? Is it safety for the lane, or just knowledge for the jungler? Kind of both the same thing?
It's definitely a lot to do with knowledge for the jungler because of the importance of those buffs, and because both of these are very mobile junglers. They can get off to very early ganks. If you see them, the direction that they leave their second buff tells you a lot about what lane they're trying to go to, and then you can play accordingly. But it looks like we're going to have the red start here from Nintendude, actually taking away OddOne's red.
And we will get the 2v1 lane setups. They are going to be able to grab that nicely. Xpecial doing what he could, but too little too late. So they make their way out with the red buff. Nintendude looks like he won't be getting any help at level 2. He'll be fine at that blue. And the lanes now to start. Oh, Xpecial is roaming.
And OddOne has actually not opted to go counter steal Nintendude's red. Even though he saw Nintendude steal his, he's coming over to get the blue instead. And it's a funny rotation here, as Nintendude predicted that OddOne would actually steal his red. Now they're actually just both going to have 2 reds on Nintendude and then 2 blues for OddOne.
Very interesting.
I think that favors the OddOne here, because blue buff will actually speed up his jungle quite a lot on Elise, whereas red buff for Nintendude is not going to speed it up that much. And he's starting with that Doran's Blade, it's going to be very unhealthy in the jungle right now.
Walking through a ward to this bottom lane. Looks like Dyrus will know. Kind of hug the top side of that wall to bait him in for a little bit, but also stay in a safe spot. Dodging out Aqua Prison. The top lane is pushing just about the same right now. Everybody trying to hold their own, and no pressure coming in from Jarvan just yet, except for the bottom lane. So ZionSpartan here is going to be pressured in the same thing that Dyrus is.
So both junglers have the same idea, going for the 3 versus 1s instead of trying to defend this time around. So really it's just who can get the damage on the turret quick enough, and the advantage is in TSM's favor because the OddOne is running a range jungler, whereas Nintendude being melee, it's very dangerous for him to go in for those tower hits because OddOne's got Flame Spitter, or Dyrus has Flame Spitter on him.
Dyrus just keeping near that silence range to overheat himself. doing his maximum damage. Turret in the top lane taking a lot more damage here, Kobe, than that one in the bottom. TSM usually the one to grab that first turret, but everything slows down after that for them. It's like that's what they know to go for really quick and then kind of stalls.
It's the advantage of having a jungler that can change to a ranged form here as Dyrus takes some extra harass, getting a little bit too far out from his turret.
So they are going to be able to take this down. 4 minutes in, TSM, very TSM-esque. It's going WildTurtle. No kills on the board so far, but it is going to be an 800 gold lead for that little buff back and forth, and that turret going down.
And Vayne getting off to a good start like that is essential for their team. Dyrus, you could see, canceled his recall in the bottom because that turret went down top for TSM. He's waiting until OddOne can arrive to support that turret so that they don't let Coast even up the gold.
No Ahri in mid. We just saw Shiphtur go back. He buys 2 rings. Dyrus with a good bit of damage going down. It looks like he will be able to stay off on the backside. Is Expunge going to be enough? The true damage ticking, but it looks like he stays alive. Just so much turret aggro going back and forth, but they're able to get out and give it back to the minions.
That was a beautiful flash from Dyrus to get out of the way of the Jarvan combo, and Reggie does get juked here.
Oh, ring around the rosy. Daydreamin trying to make it out. He goes to the right. Reggie goes to the left. A high road and the low road have been chosen.
Our second game of hide and seek this week in the North American LCS, and it looks like Daydreamin comes out ahead in this one. He gets out alive.
Getting himself back to base. Trying to get to that sight stone soon enough. They know the pressure in these lanes is going to start to get heated now that turrets are falling down.
Okay, so we got excited about the fact that Daydreamin pulled some sneaky moves there and tricked Reggie, but that's not to say that Coast came out ahead in that. That was making the best of a bad situation. Yes. That was a very bad failed 3v1 dive that cost them a lot of extra damage and free minion farm for the AD carry. WildTurtle spent that entire time just farming up in the top lane, and they pushed the wave all the way down to the secondary turret of Team Coast.
A whole bunch of summoners went with that as well. They might know MashMe and Daydreamin, both flashes will be coming up at the same time. We'll see if they try to act on that or use Dragon as an advantage point to pressure those. 6.9 to 7.5k TSM grabbing a bit of gold as they're still just going back and forth. It's all about the CS and that turret for them. There are no kills on the board right now.
This is so dangerous for DontMashMe and Daydreamin right now. Just because they failed that dive, they have 0 summoners at their disposal, and Daydreamin didn't bring any wards to this lane either. So TSM can call that out to TheOddOne, and they can gank down bottom very, very easily.
He bought that health crystal, now goes back to pick himself up some wards. They have switched Dyrus into the top lane. As you can see, ZionSpartan now heading off in the 1v1, so the 2v2s to match up. Nintendude there. Looks like it's only going to be for some turret damage, though.
And Dyrus, again, he can use that Flame Spitter under a turret to damage both enemies at the same time. Shiphtur, however, was able to shove Reggie back because the early rise is so weak, and now that's freed him up to come for another 3v1 dive.
They try to go in. Shiphtur up top. He gets the charm on, but he's behind the turret. Will they be able to pinch themselves in and get out at the same time? They do. The aggro onto Shen. It looks like there may be a dragon coming from this, though, so they got to grab that turret.
TSM not wasting any time. They are going to answer with this one, and Nami and Twitch cannot contest that. It's much too dangerous for them, especially since they don't have summoners. Now that Ryze has hit level 6, Reggie does a good job of using his ulti and that AoE to clear out the minions on the turret.
That's pretty big. A Dyrus for a dragon.
Yeah, great trade right there for TSM. They're continuing. Oh, here we go. Flash
he gets
Reggie.
It. That ignite may not be enough. It's going to take a few times. He should be good. The potion's going. ZionSpartan to turn Reggie back around. His flash is down there. He gets a little hyphy in the top lane.
Yeah, flash and ignite down for Reggie. But because he kept 2 people up top, the rotation from TSM focused over to go to middle, and they're taking out the essential middle turret.
They have control of their lanes. Control of every turret so far still. This bottom one finally about to go down. 2 have already fallen, and it's 4 minutes later that they're able to grab their first turret. They do have that kill on the board in their favor, and that gold goes to NintendudeX, who is a playmaker for them and is one of the ones you want to get.
Ooh, as OddOne just steals away his blue buff again. This is one of the things OddOne focuses most on, is continuing to keep track of the timers of his opponent's buffs. All 4 buffs he writes down in the chat. And it just paid off right there as he was a few seconds ahead of Nintendude to that blue buff.
With that timer still in mind, we'll see where TSM starts to move. They do have pink and regular sight going down onto Dragon, so the battle there is in their favor. And really, Coast only has something for aggressive laning, for getting the farm down, not for taking that Dragon back.
Coming in.
Shen on the bottom lane, MashMe gets it, the taunt does land, Dyrus gets exhausted, they're using quite a bit to take him down, and he gets out, the Vorpal hits him right in the end, and Reginald on the backside is just going to have to hit some.
That is a large cooldown, not going to be available though, and Dyrus, really, TSM have been switching him to always be in a 2 versus 1 or 3 versus 1 situation. So he has been kept down very well by Coast, just because TSM are always putting him on the off foot here. OddOne, able to secure his own buff.
4 blue buffs for OddOne this game. He absolutely loves the cooldown, so he's going to take it again. 9 minutes and 40 in, he's racked up all of those, and really, it's going to be NintendudeX to start getting those plays in for his team. Everybody's starting to hit level 6, so we're going to see those big fights coming out. It's not on Xpecial yet, so TSM may be waiting for that to really engage on something.
That was actually a much bigger win for TSM than you would think, because WildTurtle has been free farming up top, and TheOddOne did get the golden experience from taking that blue buff. Even though they were trying to give it to Reggie, because TheOddOne had already stolen Coast blue buff, at least they still retained the experience and gold from it.
Not a lot of pressure being allowed from each lane. These 2v1s really allowed Team Solomid to do what they needed to, is get out of laning phase without too much pressure. They are down 2, but like you said, they want to get WildTurtle farm. So they're going to kind of leave him where he was before, and hopefully he's not still in that slump that we saw, because he was before off in the lanes farming with Caitlyn or with Draven, but wasn't presenting in the fights.
And what they need to do is have Xpecial ward up the lane that they're going to leave WildTurtle in, because he is very vulnerable at this point in the game.
Boom.
He hasn't even finished.
They can hear you.
Thank you. The Blade of the Ruined King. Once he does finish that, it actually adds a lot of disengage for Vayne, and she can be very slippery. But the range on the Cutlass is much shorter, and it's a bit harder to use.
And we've actually seen when Doublelift played Vayne, it was actually against a Rise, and he built the Frozen Mallet and whatnot. So different builds coming in for different people. We'll see what MashMe decides to do. They're not using Rise for split pushing, so different things coming in from every point. 11 minutes in here, 2 kills on the board, and still that 700 gold lead for Team Solomid. This is really reminiscent of what they used to do in the early part of the game. NintendudeX can't get there to help his lanes. Team Solomid is just going to kind of slowly do this until they find more mistakes.
Yeah, the only lanes here that are staying where they were is Reggie at mid lane and Shiphtur at mid lane. Still, just going about even here, just Reggie a little bit down in CS because of the roaming that he's been doing and trying to come in and shore up those towers.
Reggie going back, he has a good amount of gold on him, picks up almost that rod. That is going to be stacking up soon. We're only 12 minutes into this game, not seeing too many core items yet, except for the junglers who have been making those moves for themselves. Pressure here on the mid lane, it's only Dyrus. He's going to get some help from Xpecial. TSM is doing a great job at making sure they're at a turret when it needs to be guarded and really spreading themselves thin, but keeping enough power where they need it.
Coast right now are trying to bait in TSM for the next Stand United. It just became available again, so ZionSpartan can use his second one. The only thing that Zion has to be aware of right now is the condemn from WildTurtle. So he does have to get out of range, unless we have the sneaky DontMashMe trying to make his way in. Nope.
With that free farming WildTurtle's been doing, MashMe also at that 100 CS mark. 95 to 83 between Reginald and Shiphtur. And we can see the junglers, a little bit of a discrepancy, but not too much. Everybody quite close in this game so far. The sight stones are out, so a lot more caution being taken by both teams here as they see those in the inventories. Maybe even see the oracles a little bit earlier too with its recent change.
Ward control at this point is extremely important, and 20 seconds on the next dragon is going to mean that Team Coast will probably try and use that Shen ulti, the Stand United, to get an advantage in that dragon fight. They can actually have him split pushing and have TSM the ones that are going to have to tank the dragon.
They finally got that Sunfire Cape finished up onto Shen, so even more split pushing happiness for him. OddOne getting bubbled up, takes a little bit of damage there. They go on to MashMe. He's the first one towards the fight, and he gets taken out.
And that was through the Stand United shield, so they just blasted him before they even had a chance for Shen to get there. This is huge for TSM.
And that really wasn't a pink ward. They were able to grab that on regular sight. Daydreamin gets hit. The equalizer cuts off the team, and Daydreamin back entrance into the fight. They're able to take and answer back. Now a 2-2. Very low health on the NintendudeX as well. He's able to get out of the fight, and they turn the tide back onto ZionSpartan, who was able to make it down. And it looks like he is going to be chased. NintendudeX makes it out. Zion may just hang out for the party.
But WildTurtle's not here, and now OddOne's actually in trouble because Zion is so strong. He skipped Boots to go for Sunfire.
Oh, he's overheating right now. Zion, Sunfire Cave doing a bit of damage. OddOne to come back. The repel coming in. Where's the Q? It's going to be the Flame Spitter from Dyrus.
Looks like Dyrus burns hotter than ZionSpartan right there. He does come out with the victory, and WildTurtle leaving that fight did not cost them. So they went for the little bit greedy play there where they sent WildTurtle bottom to grab a few extra CS and shove that into the turret, and it paid off there. They still came out with the kill.
Very, very aggressive by Coast. They're losing MashMe right off the bat and still choosing to go in. I like it. They're going to get this mid turret off it as well. And Dragon still stands.
That one's still going to be a magnet for team fights too, because Reggie showed himself up top.
Oh, Shiphtur coming across the mid side. He's going to have to go coast to coast if Reggie wants to get in here. Xpecial up. It looks like they're kind of taking this one slow. No, it's going to be Nintendu to the back line with the flag toss. Xpecial gets exhausted on the backside. That might have been a misclick, but they are going to get out safely.
It's definitely a misclip. Exhausting the Thresh is not the main target there. They're trying to get that one onto WildTurtle. Now all characters have joined the fight, though, and we'll have another 5-on-5 reenactment. This time, you're going to have to watch out for the positioning of the Twitch, because Twitch players will get a little bit overconfident and say that they can misposition themselves because they are invisible, and it gives them that false sense of confidence. Fighting around Dragon, though, where pink wards are littered everywhere, opens you up to being picked out like that and can cost you dearly.
And these fights for Coast are kind of scary. Obviously, Shen's going to be split pushing and stand United down right now, so he's near the team, but no boots on Shen, no boots on Ahri, which is a bit safer because of that ult. But look at the team. You have that Scrap Shield Rumble chasing you, WildTurtle on Vayne passive chasing you, and it looks like they're actually going to be engaged on this fight. Shiphtur is going to be in the front. The equalizer goes down the backside. A really nice disengage. They ride the wave on the backside, and it looks like, again, they stall out the Dragon.
It's at 50% life, but TSM still don't want to try and go for that one. Equalizer being down is huge. Now that it's reset, they're going to try and finish this one.
They're able to keep that HP down. He doesn't get the expunge. They're able to get the execute and smite.
So TSM able to zone Coast off the Dragon, and Reggie coming up big there. Blue buff Rise extremely scary at this point, with everybody being so low health, even Equalizer being down and only getting a few ticks there on Ahri and then a few ticks on Zion. They are able to grab the objective finally.
You know, with the items we see Shiphtur building here, the Deathfire Grass coming out, the Rise pick comes into play even more, and even that Thresh to keep WildTurtle safe. The Rune Prison as Ahri would try to come in and just one-shot out Vayne.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we have any early Negatron cloaks built by either of those two. Rise definitely would love to just go Spirit Visage next. As soon as he finishes that Rod of Ages, then if he can grab the Negatron cloak, it would protect him against that all-in from Ahri. And that's a very common build right now. Popularized by those Koreans. You always have to shout them out. But it just adds so much to Rise's kit because cooldown reduction is very important to him.
17.5 minutes in, the kills have been evened up as those are going in favor of Coast, which means TSM has been making the moves. They've been pressuring the Dragon fights quite well and making sure that everything going accordingly to keep the gold lead. It was 700 for quite some time, but now they have about 3K in their lead. We'll say 2K as they're about to approach 22,000. 2-2 in turrets, so they've evened that up against TSM, who we know to be a formidable team at dropping turrets and wanting that at global gold really fast.
And it's an interesting difference between the AD carries and how they've spent their gold. I talked about DontMashMe loving the crits for Twitch, and he's definitely stayed true to that style where he's going for the Infinity Edge. Whereas we have WildTurtle talking about that duelist Vayne that he likes to be the split pusher now for TSM, and he's gotten Blade of the Ruin King for that chasing ability or the disengage.
Aegis almost filled out here for the magic damage coming in from Coast. That's going to be a huge, huge thing coming into the fight fights for auras.
Now, it seemed like a lot didn't happen in the last 40 seconds, but that was actually a big win for TSM because they had TheOddOne and Xpecial shove this bottom lane into turret, so Coast lost a lot of experience at that turret as all the minions were just throwing their lives up against this turret and dying over there and being wasted, while 2 members of TSM could fend off this 4-man team of Coast that are wasting a lot of time in the middle there. And that's the power of these dual AoE AP mages that they are running.
Gonna try to stop down onto WildTurtle here. He could be... Uh-oh.
Yeah, he knows what's coming. He knows he's getting hunted.
He's in a whole lot of trouble. Actually, he's safe because he still has that turret behind him. Dyrus, walks into the bush. He throws down the equalizer, flashes the flag toss, but he's going to go down.
They could actually start a fight off of that, though.
Reginald able to catch Nintendude. He is definitely going to get taken out. MashMe. They have Shen coming in, but he gets taken. He gets hit right away with the Blade of the Rune King.
Oh!
They burst down Reginald. He had no idea what happened. Not even a chance to breathe there. WildTurtle's fending off 4 members of Coast by himself, but they say, wait a minute, it's just a vein. Finally turn around and take him out.
And TheOddOne now comes in from the base there. That is very unfortunate for TSM. If he would have come to that team fight, I was going to say they could fight off of the back of Dyrus, getting his equalizer off before dying. That's still a lot of damage because he landed a good equalizer. But we saw the difference there in the aftermath where Reggie has gone for the spell penetration boots and a blasting wand instead of that Negatron cloak that we talked about that could build into a Spirit Vision. So he's trying to upgrade that the tier first, and it definitely cost him right there as he got blown up.
He's getting blown up, Kobe. The plays Coast are trying to make right now, getting themselves in the jungle. They have no wards to be worried about when they were in there. And TSM, I wouldn't say getting complacent, but I feel like they do know they're ahead and they aren't making the moves necessary. TheOddOne, though, trying to make plays for the team, knows they need to get something back off of these and start adapting to Coast, adapting to their strategy.
Yeah, he was trying to make something happen here. And he has to be careful because there's a minion on him following.
Oh my
so
word,
Team Coast are aware of this one. Because they saw the minions following TheOddOne, and he made a beeline straight for that Baron. So now they're going to fight.
Nami ult is down. That's a big disengage and a lot of damage they would take without being able to answer back to Baron.
No
it's going to go down. They get the smite. They're going to have to fight this. They turn there, but nobody's there to gap close with Nintendude. He just says, let's party in Cataclysm, and then you guys can go.
So now all the people, if they were criticizing Reggie for the earlier fight where he bought offensively instead of buying Negatron Cloak, you can give him credit for that last call because that was 100% Reggie going into the Baron and even starting it up himself, making the entire TSM act as one. And you can see in action right there the difference between a TSM that is focused and following the calls and a TSM that is confused and not making the decisions crispy like that. Crispy? Crisply.
Crispy decisions. Making it happen. We'll see what they can continue to pull out of this. Coast looking to make the magic happen now. They try. Oh, Xpecial just on the outside. Oh, he plays back the taunt, and he got hit by the flask, and it still didn't matter. That was a play that just ended all of the engage.
Xpecial has shown time and again that he is definitely a contender for that Thresh title. That was an amazing play to stop that taunt.
Play.
That right there, it just saved his life. That 100% that play.
Dyrus in the mid lane, pushing minions. Shiphtur has no minions, so they're going to not do anything. Now, 22 minutes in, 7-6, 4,000 gold. It's not been increasing that much. Somehow Coast is holding it to 4,000, and Team Solomid is getting all of these objectives, which
they're not going to hold it. Yeah, they're not going to hold it for 4,000.
It's going to go up a little bit, but watch them grab a turret or a few kills off of this. Team Solomid still spreading themselves thin, and that's what Coast has been able to act on.
And TSM are traveling as a pack right now because you can see how sparse their ward coverage is at this point. They need to give Xpecial the time to walk through the jungles here as they escort him and allow him to place more wards so they can see the movements of Team Coast before they get into the danger zone.
Keeping Dyrus in the top, this lets TSM know that that area of effect magic damage is not there from Ahri.
Dyrus is in the danger zone. He's being cornered.
Oh, the flash from Reginald goes into the fight. Starts that one off for the team, and it looks like they call to go through with this one. TheOddOne repels under the turret. They call back. Shiphtur has 1v1 Dyrus up towards the red buff, and it looks like they will continue. Nintendude locks him up, and the turret goes down at the same time.
Xpecial with the death sentence for Nintendude. It was actually a pretty good sacrifice there by Dyrus. 2 members were converging on him. I thought he was the one in trouble, but Reggie made up for it by flashing in for the initiation.
Getting in there on to Shen. ZionSpartan forced out of the fight. He has no energy, so he's kind of just a figurehead right now to the fight. Also very low on health. These guys are not rocking the home guards yet. He has his first boots. He bought them very late. 24 minutes in. Team Solomid's going to take the inhibitor, and they're going to waltz out of the base.
And there's the upside of building all offense on the rise. The burst damage that Reggie was bringing actually allowed them to land the kills before there was time for a reaction from Coast. So it is definitely a trade-off, and TSM are looking like they want to keep up their undefeated regular season against this Team Coast.
Going through the consideration, the Negatron Cloak's actually coming out onto Shiphtur as he goes for the Abyssal Scepter. ZionSpartan going to be able to do some good damage here as these guys do-si-do it up the river. MashMe's going to meet him. He has nothing to repel to right now. Looks like Xpecial may go down. A good shield and help from WildTurtle. And these guys have just continuously been in chase fights. They cannot find what they want, and this means they haven't been pushing something they want. They're just chasing.
That was very lucky for TSM that they actually got out of that
chase. No, it
chase.
just keeps happening.
Coast almost were able to get a pick off, and that's what we talked about their comp being oriented around with that Ahri and the Shen. That's exactly the play that they wanted to pull off, but they couldn't quite close it there. And WildTurtle showing up to defend his support right there really just saved his life.
It's like Jat said yesterday, always 50 range. It's always it's like 50 range away. You can't get it. 25 minutes, still the score just equaling out always after these fights. They are finding the kills they need. There are not a lot of bounties to be had, though, since everybody continues to go down. So the gold is always coming from the move on the objectives, the move on where they can push the lane and figure out how to fully ace the fight, because we haven't seen it yet.
And TSM need to continue to be decisive and follow the singular calls here that Reggie's making, because the other team has a Shen, and if they dilly-dally around outside of the base, then Coast are going to get back into this game. So you can see they're not wasting any time. They're going straight for these hard objectives, taking down the turrets, and forcing Coast to react so that they don't let Zion make use of his global ulti.
So Baron has now worn off of Team Solomid. Doesn't look great for Coast to fight, but it does look a little bit better for them. So they're feeling that. Pressure relieved. The Abyssal Scepter finished out onto Ahri. We got to remember that last fight in the bottom lane, Ahri and Dyrus, like you said, they were keeping Ahri back. They didn't have that magic damage in the fight, so we'll have to see how that contributes if they can get their full 5v5. We haven't seen it happen from Coast yet.
And for Coast, you can see Zion actually trying to split push in that bottom lane, but because he's built all tank, he's having trouble even dealing with a super minion wave. So he's not going to be able to push that one and put the pressure onto TSM to act here. They're easily going to be able to walk in and get more shots on that turret.
And this is really TSM just flexing their muscles at this point. We're behind everything you have. We're going to dive you behind turrets. Oh, going in. That's the Deathfire Grasp onto Reginald, and he locks down Shiphtur. It's going to be the damage they need for this. Oh, he might get her. Oh, he goes down with the last Q. Shut down both ways.
And that was the Stand United shield used as well. So a huge cooldown and a 1-for-1 trade. That is fine for TSM, even though it does bring Coast a little bit closer here. You can see Reggie, never the one to run away from a fight. He will stand and fight you until he goes down.
They still have good siege onto the turret with Dyrus there. They have the equalizer up to really separate a fight if anything goes wrong. And it looks like they are still just going to, as I said before, flex their muscles and stand in front of Coast, as they really can't get out of their base.
Because it's so early in the game, though, and death timers are not that long yet, only 5 more seconds on Ahri means she's going to come back up, and that will be a 5 vs 4 for Coast. Reggie's got much too long of a walk to be able to join them, and it does stall for the Baron to respawn.
So even in this early part of the game, is it gold right now, or a contribution of those death timers to why we aren't seeing home guards just yet?
It's both, really. I mean, it's a bit early in the game to spend all that money on just a boot upgrade.
Especially when it kind of
Team Coast would definitely be considering now, anytime you get pushed to your inhibitor turrets is the time where you start thinking about buying those. TSM, it's not even in their thought process yet.
Oh, no.
But Team Coast, definitely thinking about that one. So you can see some of the boots being upgraded to level 2. And that's just the first step to get to that home guard.
We'll see what they can do. Daydreamin finally picking up that Oracles. He's going to start roaming around and taking back their jungle. They've been in almost a complete blackout, which means they've been fighting in the choke points and the stairs of their base, losing one person at a time, but gaining one as well. 8-8, now 9-9 after that last little battle, but the turret in favor of Team Solomid here, they're going to be able to grab that. See what they can do off of this.
This turret going down and the fact that they have a super minion wave inside of Team Coast's base means that they can easily force this Baron, and it's going to be very, very hard for Coast to contest this one because Zion does not have his stand united to join the fight here. So him going down there means if TSM can catch any of Coast at this Baron contest, then it will be a 5 vs 4.
There's the equalizer. There's the Nami wave coming through. It looks like they're going to be okay for this one. Reginald again into the fight with a flash and an engage for his team. They continue to go. OddOne picks one up. WildTurtle is going crazy now. He's got the attack speed going, and he does. No, it's going to be Dyrus picking that one up. A long-range cocoon over from downtown. TheOddOne helps to take out Daydreamin.
Like I said, that was a very risky maneuver from Coast from the very beginning right there. At best, it would be a 5 vs 4 with a little bit of extra Baron damage on TSM. But as I said, TSM, they grab the pick and they turn that one very easily, even after burning down Baron. So TSM working on the inside of the base.
Still, those low timers may thwart them off here, but it's very much so been a TSM slow and steady game, playing very smart and very strategically here. The Nexus turret's in their eyes. It looks like for the 3rd time on the summer split, they will be able to take down Coast, unless Nintendude has something to say about it.
He just got silenced there. Nothing else to say. They don't want to hear what he has to say.
Here we go. Day 2, 6-1 TSM versus Coast. Looks like TSM gets the Nexus to 50, has an easy way down from there, and they're able to take down the Nexus for a win.
Xpecial typing a little GG well played there at the end. You can see quick fingers. Want to get that one out before the victory screen pops up.
This is a very well played game by both teams. TSM was just, that was a really, I guess, a perfect game that we can say of to go back and look at of when you win a fight, being able to do something after it. Because the score was even every time, but TSM always did something after it.
I have to say, the really crucial turning point there was that Reggie call for all of TSM to rush Baron while 2 members of Coast were in the base. And he even started up by himself on that rise. OddOne, even though he was drawing minions over, allowing Team Coast to know that they were doing Baron. It was too little too late, and they were able to just burn it down because they acted as one, and they may or may not have solved those communication issues they always refer to.
One thing that really stuck in my head about that game is the instance when Dyrus got caught in their jungle, right? And Coast was making moves, they were pushing down, they had just taken mid, so they had a little bit of entry into the jungle. And then they saw WildTurtle by himself, and 4 of them hesitated, which tells you they were a little worrisome about even just facing Vayne for a quick second. And I think that definitely helped in the initiation onto the Baron. They weren't going to re-engage if they were afraid of WildTurtle a few minutes ago. They're afraid of our full team.
And that hesitation also means that they need to work on their ward coverage. Because if they have full vision of the map, then they would be well informed and they can actually make those decisions.
A really great play there. We've got to take a short break, but when we return, TSM's Dyrus will join us to talk about picking up the win. Then it's time for our